In a niche segment of the gaming market lies the medieval warfare action hack and slash genre that have a few standout winners. For us, the top of the list are MORDHAU and Chivalry 2, although For Honor is worth the honourable mention, but is in a subgenre of its own in our opinion. Check out our channel for the individual review of Chivalry 2, with MORDHAU on the way in the near future. On the surface, the unplayed eye would see both titles as one and the same, but there are some very significant differences that will really define which one you'll end up preferring if you had to choose. The techniques and mechanics designed into both are based on many years of playing older similar titles, with new tech being discovered over time and meta-defining characteristics cemented into the future of the genre. MORDHAU released in mid-2019, whereas Chivalry 2 came out 2 years later in 2021. Initially, Chiv felt more modern and arcadey to play, whereas MORDHAU had that more gritty, barbaric feel to it. Let's break it down a little.
If we start off with the gameplay, combat is one of the clear differences between Chivalry and MORDHAU. Where Chivalry goes for a more casual and arguably easier experience, MORDHAU adds a complexity that puts its skill ceiling far above that of Chiv, and as a result is a lot harder to master and far more competitive. Personally, I find Chivalry more fun because it allows for longer engagements. It allows for 1vx fights where you feel like you have a chance to outplay more than one opponent at one time, and a more engaging and immersive feel that you're part of a battle. This immersive feeling also has a lot to do with the maps, which we'll get onto a bit later. MORDHAU, on the other hand, is far more technically complex, and while this is an attractive thing for a lot of players, many other players will get frustrated by the cheese and the crazy movement and mouse movement that you can do to get an edge on your opponent. Blocking, for example, on Chivalry is far easier. You hold block, and if you're generally pointing in the right direction, you will block that attack. In MORDHAU, you have to time your block because it can't be held, and you have to do it in the right direction. This small thing alone with blocking makes the game far more difficult. And it means that in MORDHAU, if you get ganged up on, you're probably going to die. Either way, some players will prefer the more technical experience of MORDHAU, and some will enjoy the more casual feel of Chivalry. Personally, I prefer the latter.
When it comes to the environments themselves, there's a fairly distinct difference between the two. They both support similar player sizes in the main modes. The map design along with the combat differences promote a more strategic feel in MORDHAU, feeling a bit more open-ended with many options to approach the battlefield, always having to be careful not to take on large groups, along with using the more surgical mechanics required to win the fights. It keeps you looking for 1v1s or smaller skirmishes as much as possible. As for Civ 2, you get that less risky arcade-like feel. The map progression is a bit more linear, so everyone is moving as a larger group. It's easier to hold your own in any scenario due to the block mechanic, and therefore can be less tactical in most approaches to the battle. The difference in graphical fidelity is night and day to us, Civ looking more modern, fluid and colourful, however MORDHAU still unquestionably holding its own with its personal style and more grit to suit the seriousness of its combat over Civ.
When it comes to customization and gear, both games allow you to choose what loadout you go for. However, MORDHAU gives you a little extra flexibility in a point-buy system, where Civ locks you into classes, with different weapons and gear being available in each class. For example, here in MORDHAU, I can go in and select a bunch of different weapons and gear with the only limitation being the points to spend. The armor gets more expensive the better it is, and the weapons vary massively, from not carrying anything at all to some of the more heavy-hitting equipment. What this does is give you the flexibility to play exactly how you want. Some people even make no weapon builds that spawn empty-handed and pick up stuff that's on the floor, enabling them to put their points in things like armor. On the other hand, here in Civ, I have to select the class I want to play, and then decide on the subclass. Once you've got a role that you want, you're then able to choose a selection of weapons specific to that subclass, meaning that Civ is far less flexible, which to me is kind of a shame. However, it does have the benefit of balancing things out and keeping the players within a more narrow boundary of gear and equipment.
Along with the intricate layers of combat design are the differences in mode and progression systems. Both games don't have a battle pass, opting for unlocking gear through in-game play. Great. However, there is a bought currency model in Chivalry to purchase cosmetics with real money, and a few cosmetic sets that can be purchased through Steam for MORDHAU, none of which offer any aspect of pay to win. It seems like they both offer a really consumer-friendly business practice, not relying on fear of missing out tactics to guilt you into spending your time differently than how you want to play it. As for modes, Civ 2 allows 2 different team sizes of quick play for a mix of modes, some free-for-all and some team-based, a nice bot mode for newbies, and a 3v3 or 1v1 arena mode, currently all unranked. MORDHAU, however, also has a quick play, a PvE horde mode which is a co-op survival, brawl, smaller servers of team deathmatch and skirmish, and the bonus of a ranked 3v3 and 1v1 arena mode for the more competitive among us. Both games have a server browser to use, which sadly for Civ 2 might be necessary if you and your friend are playing on different platforms, as currently you can only friend someone using the same platform as you, making all the modes unusable if this is you and your friends.
Both MORDHAU and Chivalry provide players with the ability to jump into a medieval battlefield, customize their loadouts, and go at it in a PvP frenzy. However, both do it very differently. Chivalry goes for more simplicity over technical skill ceilings, meaning that although there are parries and blocks, you don't have to worry so much about the block direction, the block timing, and making sure that you get those perfect clicks every time. MORDHAU, on the other hand, gives players a high technical ceiling in the form of being unable to hold block, needing to focus on the direction of your attacks, and generally being a far more difficult game to master. What this means is that Chivalry lends itself to being a more beginner-friendly playstyle, and a more casual experience, which I personally think is a good move. Where MORDHAU provides a higher skill ceiling, it's also very unforgiving, and the skill gap between old and new players is so vast that newer players might well get discouraged. Then there's also the general feel of both games, and after jumping in both side by side, the gap in quality is pretty clear. Chivalry just feels like the far better experience. The movement is smoother, the graphics are better, the maps are better, the combat itself feels more fluid, and all in all, it's a far more polished experience. That's not to say that MORDHAU is necessarily bad, it's simply showing its age a bit, and against Chivalry it's just not as good. And while graphically it's looking a little old, the main downside in comparison to Chivalry is the feel of how you move. After jumping directly from Chiv, MORDHAU just feels a little sluggish and a bit awkward. And while the game is more technical, it just didn't feel as good to me. To end the video, we much preferred Chivalry. It's more casual, more fun, it looks better, and it will likely age better over the coming years.